Good evening. I will call our meeting to order as it is 7 p.m. We will begin by reading a return of the warrant. Town of Charlton, Massachusetts, warrant for special town meeting Monday, October 15, 2018. To either of the constables of the town of Charlton in the county of Worcester, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify the inhabitants of the town of Charlton qualified to vote in elections to meet in the Charlton Middle School, Oxford Road in said Charlton, on Monday, October 15, 2018, at 7 o'clock in the evening, for the purpose of taking action on the articles presented. And you are directed to serve this warrant by posting attested copies thereof, one at each of the post offices, one in Dexter Memorial Hall, and one in the Charlton Municipal Offices, George C. McKinstry III Building.
Yeah.
Thank you. In said town, 14 days at least before the time and place of holding meeting. Hereof fail not, and make due returns of the warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of holding meeting. Given under our hands this 25th day of September in the year of our Lord 2018. Signed by the Board of Selectmen, John P. McGrath, Chairperson, Deborah B. Noble, Vice Chair, Karen A. Speedwork, Clerk, and Joseph J. Zafarowitz, Member. A true copy attested by hand October 1st, 2018 by Karen LaCroix, Town Clerk, and posted as directed by Richard Fisk Jr., Constable, on October 1st, 2018. Please stand now with your hats removed and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin, I just want to review the procedures and protocols that we'll be following this evening. First of all, in terms of egress from the hall, there are 2 exits off the stage and 2 at the rear of the auditorium. For discussion, all who wish to address the assembly must do so by going through the moderator. Please come forward to the microphone to be recognized and to identify yourself, giving name and address, before succinctly expressing your views on the article in question. Respectfully, all discussion will be limited to the merits of the article, avoiding all personalities and issues that do not pertain directly to the article in question. For other than a voice vote, we will ask you to use your blue voter registration card. The front section to my left has been reserved for non-voters. We ask that everyone remain seated throughout the meeting, and that includes no standing in the aisles, as that's a fire rule, and that no side conversations take place so that everyone can hear the proceedings. If anyone should fail to cooperate with these established protocols, that person will be warned and then removed from the meeting if necessary, under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 17. So thank you in advance for your cooperation so that our meeting may run smoothly. Article 1, appropriation of funds for unpaid bills of a prior fiscal year. To see if the town will vote to raise by taxation, transfer or borrow and appropriate a sum or sums to accounts to be specified at the town meeting for payment of one or more prior fiscal year's bills not paid due to an insufficiency of appropriation or for other reasons, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. McGrath.
I move that the following prior year bills not previously paid due to insufficiency of appropriation or late billing be paid from the following fiscal year 19 accounts as printed below. The unpaid bill is WB Mason. It's for various department office supplies. The amount is $862.86, and it's from the fiscal year 19 municipal offices expense and equipment account.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to pay the prior year bills not previously paid due to insufficiency of appropriation in the sum of $862.86. Is there a recommendation, please, from the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee supports this motion.
And a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen approves this motion.
Is there anything to be said on this matter? Hearing none, a 9/10 vote is required in order to pass this motion in the affirmative because it relates to an insufficiency of appropriation. We will still attempt a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no? No. With 3 dissenting votes, I declare that we have the necessary 9/10 for passage. Article 2, intra-departmental transfers and/or appropriations for FY 2019 budget. To see if the town will vote to raise by taxation, borrow or transfer, and appropriate from available funds, including so-called free cash and/or funds previously appropriated to other uses, a sum or sums of money to accounts and for purposes to be specified at the special town meeting, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Ms. Noble?
I move that the following sums be raised by taxation or transferred, whichever is indicated below, and appropriated to the following accounts for any purpose for which funds may be expended from the latter accounts, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen or Chief Procurement Officer to enter into such contracts, including leases, and to take such other action as may be necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of the foregoing vote, each item being considered on a separate appropriation, as listed in the table below.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to accept the intra-departmental transfers as stated and described in the booklet. Is there a recommendation, please, from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee supports this recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said regarding this matter?
Gotta give it to Karen now.
Sir?
Stephen Sage, Lincoln Point Road, Charlton. When it says to raise and appropriate, is that going to actually raise the tax level in town, or is it going to come from some other source?
Let me see if we can have an answer to that question. Finance Committee, would you be able to? Oh, Finance Director can probably answer that for us.
On the items that say raise and appropriate, that comes from taxation. You are limited to the 2.5 levy limit, so you won't go over that. It's not an override, it's just a raise and appropriate within the levy
So it's
limit.
expenses that are already going to be collected regardless.
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussions regarding this article? If not, a majority vote is necessary in the affirmative for passage. All those in favor of Article 2 as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by no? No. A majority in the affirmative, Article 2 passes. Article 3, capital items and related contracts. To see if the town will vote to raise by taxation, borrow or transfer from available funds, including so-called free cash, and funds previously appropriated to other uses, and appropriate a sum or sums to purchase capital items and/or for service, repair, improvement, architectural, construction, renovation, improvement, and/or other contracts relating to town buildings, facilities, or property, or to municipal services, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen, Chief Procurement Officer, or other appropriate town official, board, commission, or committee to enter into such contracts or leases, and to take such other action as may be necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of such votes, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Ms. Spiegler?
I move that the town vote to appropriate the following amounts to the following departments' respective accounts for the FY 2019 budget to be expended for the following purposes, each item being considered a separate appropriation, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen or Chief Procurement Officer to enter into such contracts, including leases, and to take such other action as may be necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of the foregoing vote, as printed in the table below.
Second.
We have a motion and a second before us regarding the capital items and related contracts as stated and printed in your book. Is there a recommendation, please, from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee supports this motion.
Thank you. And the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends this motion.
Let me give you a moment to look through the projected items requested and the sources of those requests. Is there anything to be said on this?
Thank you. Can someone tell, Stephen Sage, Lincoln Point Road, can someone tell me the total amount of free cash that we currently have available?
I would again ask our Director of Finance.
$1,333,620.
And where does free cash come from, since there are lots of people here who might not know that?
So at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year, when you close out the books, the state makes a determination of your equity. And it usually comes from revenues that have come in higher than what was projected and expenses that came in lower than what you had budgeted for. And it's about a 50-50 mix of what caused that amount.
Thank you for the explanation. Further discussion?
Hi, Michelle Lilly, Smith Road. I have a question about the town hall line item, this electronic signboard for $40,000.
You are asking about the electronic signboard
Right.
for the town hall.
Yeah, that should,
Let me see if I can.
seems awfully
And what
expensive.
did you want to know, what the plan is for that?
Yeah, it's kind of expensive for technology. It's almost the price of a vehicle.
Our town administrator will respond.
Okay. The signboard, if you look in front of the library, there is a signboard there. It's very old. You have to open it up, and it falls on your head. Our employees are actually lifting it up, holding it up with their head to change it. It's gotten quite dangerous, especially in the wintertime for people going out to change the signboard. We've tried to seek some grants and haven't been successful around trying to get someone else to pay for it. And the cost is, so it would be an electronic signboard, which we would be able to program from the town hall. And yes, it is a bit expensive, those boards are.
Yeah, no, it just seems like that's a really big expense
Yeah.
where you can maybe just put a TV with a laptop and cables and run it, but, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising that concern. Anything else to be said on this article? Mr. Sage?
A little more on the signboard. Is it going to be used just for the town hall, or will the library be putting things up there? Will it be, what kind of things will be announced on it, and how often does it change? And is it something that is okay to put an electronic device in that part of town?
Good question. Madam Moderator, may I? We are going to have to work with the zoning board commissioner regarding what sign and what it would look like, whether or not it could be color or black and white. I believe it may need to be black and white. It will be able to be changed easier and quicker, and it would go along the same policy as what we're using the board now, which is any town event, it takes precedent over nonprofit, and we can use the signboard to put up special events in town. We also, just to say, we also have another board that's down by the Five Corners, which allows nonprofits to put their place cards there too.
Mr. Sage, one.
The current sign that is there, you put up one sign. Will this be able to show multiple things that are happening as opposed to just one thing and then you have to
Yes.
change it a week later?
We could actually do a rolling, that's a good question, thank you for pointing that out. So we could have the town meeting, and then we could also have the meat raffle, and then we could also have opening day for the Little League, all at the same time, and it would just flash through.
Thank you. If there's nothing further to be said on Article 3, a majority vote in affirmative is necessary for passage. All those in favor of Article 3 as stated and presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no? No. I will do a counted vote so that we can be accurate. All those in favor, please signify by raising your blue voter registration card, and the people who graciously agreed to count will do so for us, please. Chief, would you please include the stage? All those opposed by the same sign?
Cindy Cooper's here. In the middle section, right row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 seats up. 8 rows up.
By a vote of 197 to 41 in the affirmative, Article 3 passes. Article 4,
138
transfer to or from
238.
stabilization funds. To see if the town will vote to transfer and appropriate a sum or sums to or from the stabilization fund account, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. Zafarowitz,
I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate the following sums to and from the following accounts and funds. To the stabilization fund in the amount of $679,254 from free cash for the purpose of reserves.
is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second before us. The town vote to transfer and appropriate $679,254 from free cash to the stabilization fund for the purpose of reserves. Is there a recommendation, please, from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee supports this article.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said regarding this matter? A majority vote in the affirmative is necessary for passage. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. 4 dissenting votes, the majority is affirmed. Article 4 passes. Thank you. Article 5, acquisition of easements needed for water line, culvert, repair, replacement, etc. at 87 Old Worcester Road as part of Exxon Mobil water line extension. To see if the town will vote, 1, to acquire by gift, purchase, and/or eminent domain taking easements at and adjoining 87 Old Worcester Road, Charlton, Mass. 01507, from the owner of that property believed to be David C. Lucia of said 87 Old Worcester Road. Such easements to be substantially as shown on a plan by David P. Prince, public land surveyor, entitled Plan of Easements for the Town of Charlton over land owned by David C. Lucia, 87 Old Worcester Road, Charlton, Massachusetts. To be reported in Worcester District Registry of Deeds, the plan, a copy of said plan being on file in the office of the town clerk for slope and drainage purposes, for the replacement, reconstruction, and maintenance of existing 72-inch culvert, head walls, riprap protection systems, and slopes. Such easements being shown on the plan respectively as A, permanent drainage easement E1, and B, proposed 3, wide temporary easement E2, including as to both the right to pass and repass on foot and with vehicles, construction, commercial, and otherwise, for the aforementioned purposes, and to conduct activities needed or advisable for such purposes. 2, to authorize the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission to enter into any contracts for this project. 3, to authorize said commission in the name and on behalf of the town to purchase and or take by eminent domain such land or interest therein as may be necessary or advisable for such purposes, and to accept such deed or deeds of easements and other instruments as the commission deems advisable to accomplish such acceptance. And 4, to authorize the commission and chief procurement officer, or either of them, to take any and all other action as if she or they deem necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of the foregoing vote, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. Singh.
I move that the article be accepted as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to accept this article as printed. Is there anything to be said on this matter? A recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, please.
The Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
A 2/3 vote in the affirmative is necessary for passage. However, we will, you have a question? Okay, please come forward. Please give us your name and address.
Deborah Pettiford, Richardson Corner Road.
Thank you.
It says to take by eminent domain. How much are you going to take?
Mr. Cosgrove, our town council, will speak to the issue of eminent domain.
There is a note in the town booklet, and it explains that the only reason eminent domain is included there is in case a title problem were to arise, because eminent domain can rectify many such title problems, but it is not intended to be used unless necessary.
Okay.
This is by agreement with the owner.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine then. Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that issue. Again, a 2/3 vote in the affirmative is necessary. We will attempt a voice vote. All those in favor of Article 5 as stated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by no? No. The ayes have it with 3 dissenting votes. Article 5 passes with the necessary 2/3. Article 6, create a water stabilization fund. To see if the town will vote, A, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5, to create a water stabilization fund from which sums may be appropriated and expended for any purpose needed to support the town's public water supply system and/or water enterprise fund. And B, to transfer and appropriate to such stabilization fund a sum from available funds, including so-called retained earnings and/or funds previously appropriated to other uses, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. McGrath.
I move that the town vote to A, create a water stabilization fund under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, for any purpose needed to support the town's public water supply system and/or water enterprise fund, and B, transfer and appropriate $50,000 from the water enterprise retained earnings to the water stabilization fund.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to create a water stabilization fund and to appropriate $50,000 from the water enterprise retained earnings in order to create that fund. The recommendation of the Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee supports this motion.
Thank you. And we have a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said on this article? If not, a majority vote is necessary for passage. All those in favor of Article 6 as stated, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no? No. The necessary majority is achieved, so Article 6 passes with approximately 6 votes in the negative. Article 7, to create a sewer stabilization fund. To see if the town will vote, A, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5, to create a sewer stabilization fund from which sums may be appropriated and expended for any purpose needed to support the town's public sewer supply system and/or sewer enterprise fund, and B, to transfer and appropriate to such stabilization fund a sum from available funds, including so-called retained earnings, and/or funds previously appropriated to other uses, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Ms. Noble.
I move that the town vote to A, create a sewer stabilization fund under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, for any purpose needed to support the town's public sewer system and/or sewer enterprise fund, and B, transfer and appropriate $200,000 from the sewer enterprise retained earnings, $27,238.86 from the Sewer Millennium Trust Fund, and $1,015,940.89 from the Sewer Capital Project Trust Fund, for a total of $1,243,179.75 to the Sewer Stabilization Fund.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to establish a sewer stabilization fund, which will be funded at a total of $1,243,179.75. We have a recommendation, please, from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee supports this motion.
Thank you. A recommendation from the Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Is there anything to be said in this matter? Mr. Sage?
Mr. Sage, Lincoln Point Road. Since there were some no votes earlier on the previous one, clearly we've had a water and sewer department for years, and they've handled their money in some other fashion. Why is this going to be better?
We'll see if we can get an answer to your question.
Mr. Boyer's coming down.
Okay. We will ask our sewer commissioner.
Good evening,
Mr.
Madam
Boria.
Moderator. Hi, Peter Boria, 4 Elm Road, and also the Water Sewer Superintendent. In the past, there has not been a water or sewer stabilization fund, and the monies have just sat in retained earnings. The money has been sitting in retained earnings in the past. So moving forward, we're trying to follow the model that the town budget uses with free cash and stabilization so that we can transfer it from retained earnings so it doesn't just sit there in no man's land where it's not really trackable, or we know what amount is there that's being able to be used. So this way here, by putting into the stabilization account, we'll know it's available for capital projects in the future, and we'll be able to use that and plan accordingly.
Thank you for that explanation. Anything further to be said regarding Article 7? Dr. Hartwig?
Robert Hartwig, 2 Freeman Road. And I'd like to know, is there any cap on this stabilization fund, or can funds simply accumulate in there indefinitely to any amount?
I'll see if I can get an answer to your question. I I think will fall on our Director of Finance.
The funds stay in the account until town meeting votes the money out of those accounts.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on Article 7? All those in favor then of Article 7 as stated, a majority vote is necessary for passage. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by no. No. With 3 votes in the negative, the necessary majority is achieved and Article 7 passes. Article 8, Personnel Bylaw Amendment Classification Plan Update. To see if the town will vote pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108A, and in accordance with the recommendation of the Personnel Board to amend as follows the portion of its personnel bylaw appearing as General Code Classification Plan, Section 220.2.1, as most recently amended by vote under warrant Article 14 of the May 15, 2017 annual meeting. By deleting therefrom the following positions in the grade level listed, from N7, Director of Assessing, Town Planner, Building Commissioner, and by adding thereto the following positions to the grades listed, to N6, IT Technician, to N8, Director of Assessing, Town Planner, Building Commissioner. Any such amendment should become effective immediately upon town meeting vote of approval, provided, however, A, that neither any particular deletion nor addition approved under this article at the town meeting shall take effect until and unless sufficient funds have been appropriated to fund any increase in compensation which would result from the deletion or addition as to that particular position. B, that any portion of such amendments, if any, as may require collective bargaining, shall not become effective until and unless resolution or impasse is reached through good faith bargaining as to same, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Ms. Speaker,
I move that the article be accepted as printed.
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to accept Article 8 as printed. A recommendation of the Finance Committee, please.
The Finance Committee approves this motion.
Thank you. A recommendation of the Board of Selectmen
Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
and a recommendation of the Personnel Board. Mrs. Hartwick?
The Personnel Board supports this motion.
Thank you. Is there anything to be said regarding this motion?
Patricia Vidlac, 58 Daniels Road. I'm also the chair of the Planning Board. At the May town meeting, the town voted so kindly to give the Planning Board Director a salary of $92,000 cap, and the maximum salary at the N8 level is $87,700. And I've been told that this could be fixed in the future, that they're going to change salaries. However, I just want to protect the original vote and make a motion to have the town planner be an N9 versus an N8.
So you are asking to amend this motion to have the town planner move from an N7 to an N9?
Correct.
We would need that amendment in writing. We have a form for you. While we're doing that, is there, as stated, is there a second to that amendment? All right, we have a motion and a second to amend Article 8 to change the status of the town planner, changing the position grade from an changing the town planner from an N7 to an N9. Our discussion will be first on the amendment, and then we'll move to the article itself. With regard to the amendment, Ms. Hartwick, would you like to speak to that?
I assume the amendment is just to place the town planner at a different position, a higher salary, which is what this woman has spoken to. The Personnel Board met, and we have a method.
Could you just lower that mic so we can hear you a little better?
Oh, I can hear myself really well. It's resounding everywhere, I can hear it. The Personnel Board met at a meeting, and we calculated by a method that we have of how these positions are scored. And we did not inflate anyone's position to come to this article, to the N8. If we thought that the job description warranted an N9, we would have scored it an N9. So that's what it is. We don't just say, well, we've saved, we have money to pay him $91,000. We're not just going to say, oh, well, we're going to give him an N9 so he can get $91,000. They scored an N8, same as the building commissioner, director of assessing, and the IT, no, the IT, that was different. So we're not going to indiscriminately raise somebody's salary just because somebody thinks they should be getting $91,000.
Thank you, and you were speaking as the we on behalf of the Personnel Board.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other people to speak to this article? Mr. Kamal.
Just for the record, at that town meeting, we approved a $70,000 N7 salary in that budget line. It was on the town meeting floor, and that was asked to be increased to $96,000. That does not mean that the salary level for that position was agreed to be $96,000. Just that amount of dollars would be in that budget. It was still an N7. And the previous planning director had only got 70. That's why we passed or approved a budget that had 70 in it. It was from the floor that it got brought up to 96.
Thank you for explaining that. Again, we're speaking just to the amendment. A comment. If you would identify yourself, and then I'll come back and find it. Okay.
Jean Vincent, Casey Road. So the townspeople voted to increase that salary to $92,000 or $96,000, and that means nothing?
I'll come back. I'll see if the finance committee would like to respond to the question that you raised.
The past planning director was actually getting $70,000 as planning director. He got $22,000 as the economic development commissioner. In this case, we're only hiring a planning director, and the other economic development commissioner is under the selectmen, and that wasn't included in that article. So when we voted last time talking that the past director got $92,000, it was incorrect that he got $92,000 as planning director. He got $70,000 as planning director. That's all he got as planning director, no other money.
Thank you for that explanation. A further question, or you all set?
Because of the
once again, identify yourself.
Patricia Vidlac, Planning Board Chair. Because of the internal conflict of our boards, there was a war, and the salary was just decreased from 90 to 70. We went to the floor and we asked for the original salary to be returned because our director, even our consultant, attends the EDC meetings. This was just town politics, but the town did vote to replace our salary, replacing our black and white. The town had voted to increase the salary back to where it was, and that falls within the N9. And I'm just asking for it to be put in the correct range for the salary that the town had already previously voted on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on the amendment? Mr. Mossick?
Yeah, just to clarify, the budget, what passed that day only put money into a particular account. It's not up to the finance committee to decide what a salary is. It's an N7. That's part of the personnel department's menu on what they pay for a salary. All we did was say, we're gonna put this money into a line item budget.
Thank you. I think you're next.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Robert Lemansky, Sunset Drive. Going back to the annual town meeting, I was the one that came up and I believe the budget was open. And as far as the budget line item goes, that the planning board director was set at $70,000. And then there was other funds in another account. And I had requested that funds be taken out of that other account and to be put into the planning director, because there has been an internal argument or discussion. Who is the planning board director and who is the EDC director? And I know when I was making my case is that the planning director and EDC director should be one and the same. Because if you've got people who want to come to this town and build a business, they need to talk right to the horse's mouth, which is the planning board director, because no one knows more than the planning director as far as the pulse of the planning board members, as far as what's going to fly, what's not going to fly, if in fact the business person is looking for some consideration on different positions of the planning board. The planning director is going to know that and not the EDC. So looking back at what happened at the annual town meeting, that position should say planning board / EDC director, and I believe it was a total of $92,000 as far as the limit of the budget amount that could be spent for that. So I certainly support that.
So your position on the amendment
is that, again, I support the amendment so that, in fact, the planning board is in charge of hiring the person who is not only going to be the town planner, but he is going to be the person as far as EDC goes because of just the knowledge, the background, and also from the point of view of people coming into town. They don't want to talk to 5 different people. They want to talk to the person who has the knowledge and who has the direct contact with the planning board. So that's why I support this. Thank you.
another comment.
My name is Jessica Leverins. I'm the HR director. And we have a comprehensive tool that we use for grading positions. And it bases the positions on duties and responsibilities. And so it goes through the job description and it evaluates based on those what the grade of the position is going to be, and only on those. So to look at a position and decide that it, based on pay only, that it needs to be a new grade, to me is not sufficient. It needs to be based on the duties and responsibilities, which is what we did. And it ended up being the N8. And I feel like it was a sufficient evaluation of the position.
Thank you for sharing the perspective of the HR department. Another comment, Mr. Sage?
Does the town have a permanent town planner, or is there an interim town planner right now?
I'll ask.
Interim right now.
Interim, so it may not be the person we hire in the future to take that spot. What is the highest salary level that somebody can have at the N8?
I'll see if I can find that out. If you perhaps the director can find it. Or HR. The highest, the question was, what is the highest salary level awarded anyone in an N8 position?
Because I'm assuming there's a range of an N8.
Yes, I have it.
Do you have that information?
I do. Okay, the N8, the range is from $33.77 to $42.18 an hour. That's an N8.
Hourly basis.
That's on an hourly basis. If you do a 40-hour week, that would come up to 80, at the top range, would come up to $87,734.
Thank you.
Mr. Delansky, further comments?
Thank
On
you.
the amendment?
On the amendment, I guess the question I have is that we now have a description from the HR director, and also Mrs. Hartworth had said that they have a description of the job, and then based on that description, they come up with. My question is did the description of the town planner also include the duties of the EDC director? Because,
See if I can find that
okay.
out for you. Perhaps our town administrator, or I believe Selectman would say, our town administrator.
I'm not sure I'm going to answer his question. I had something else that just got passed to me that I think is important.
All right, if you could share that, then we'll see if we can find someone to answer that question.
Okay. The Board of Selectmen, along with the Personnel Board and the HR Department, has started to look at, well, the Board of Selectmen's goals and objectives, part of that is to look at the classification survey, and especially in the wages. Right now, we're in the process of renegotiating the clerical contract, so we are going to be doing a comprehensive classification review as far as salaries. Right now, we have several of our non-union employees who are under the classification plan who are not within the correct range. As we've had to hire people, those hirings have been higher than some of the ranges that they actually should be in. So the Personnel Board did what they could in taking a look at where the classifications should be. The planner should be in a classification moving from a 7 to an 8. The top range right now is off maybe by $3,000. But what I want to say is that other people in 8 are also paid outside that range. So I think one way to fix this simply is that we've made a commitment to take a look at the ranges. The ranges will be appropriate. And then you keep like people in the classification, because you're talking about two different things. You're talking about the wages that they receive and the classifications that they are in. The classifications that they are in, they're doing like jobs with other department heads or non-union employees that are the same. Taking someone and putting them up into a higher classification just because of a couple $1,000s of the money isn't the appropriate way to handle this. The appropriate way to handle this would be to have the selectmen finish their classification plan, and the salaries would be adjusted. So there is nothing that actually prohibits the planning board to actually going to the 90 because it was appropriated at this time, just because of the classification.
And can someone answer the question of whether or not the planner's job responsibilities include EDC work? Our finance committee chairman.
The planning director and the EDC director are two different jobs under two different departments. And right now, we're looking purely at a planning director who wouldn't be doing their EDC work at this time.
Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath, and then I'll call on the gentleman who's been waiting.
So this has been a discussion that both the selectmen and the planning board have had, and the finance committee has put in their opinion on it, and the personnel board has also talked about this. The planning director works for the planning board. He does go to the EDC meetings, and he or she will be involved in the EDC. They probably will not take a lead role in the EDC, such as a salesperson, Rob. I believe when this Board of Selectmen has talked about that, we believe that there needs to be a little bit more of a sales organization to the EDC And that's according to the EDC members also. But there is a need for the planner to be there and be involved with the EDC for the exact reasons that you said, that the planning board director understands what and where can be developed, and he understands how to go about doing that. He can also tell the person that's asking the questions whether A, it's appropriate, B, what he thinks the planning board is gonna be asking for, or what the temperament of the planning board is on that. So it's one of those positions that is involved, in the EDC also, but he or she would be responsible to the planning board, and they would help at the EDC. They would not be in charge of the EDC for that case. The Board of Selectmen is looking at that as a different position. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Sir, you've been patient.
Sure, thank you. Don Clay, H. Putnam Road. Just like to point out that the planning director position has been open for a year now, and the planning board has been actively advertising and pursuing a new director for the full-time position, and has had a difficult time getting enough applicants at the N7 level or at the N8 level even to attract quality planning director into town. We've got a lot of issues going on in town right now, and to not have a planning director or to hire somebody at a lower salary that's might be substandard for what we need would be a detriment to the town. I also believe that the EDC role should be a higher role for the planning director. He is the one that's most aware of what can go into town, where things should go. He has always taken an active role as leading the EDC in the past, and should stay that role. It's like most towns in the area do have.
Thank you. We appreciate all the comments regarding the EDC. However, we want to stay focused on the amendment, which is asking us to increase the amount awarded as a salary to the planner. Did you have any further?
Yes.
One more comment regarding the amendment.
All right. So I got one swing of the bat here. Thank you. Okay. Just to roll back 5 years ago, when this whole issue started, it came to the town floor to where the planner and the EDC director were combined, and that salary was combined. And that went on and on with no problems. Then when the town planner retired, it seems like we've gone back to square one, and that's why at last annual town meeting, it was brought up to change that salary from the 70, I believe it was $92,000, which coupled the two together because, like I said earlier, the argument that I know I made is that they should be one and the same. Based on Ms. Craven's comments, maybe this article should be tabled until the selectmen get together and figure out exactly what they want to do. Because I believe that's what I was hearing, is that they're not sure. But as far as pigeonholing the town planner to a specific amount, again, I'm against that, and I am in favor of, like I said, the amendment to the article.
Thank you. One final comment?
I'm not asking for any additional funds or any money. I'm just merely asking for the N8, instead, from the N7 to go to an N9. That simple, not asking for no money, just the classification. So the current salary that has been allocated fits into the right category. That's it, just that.
And one final comment from the Personnel Board?
The Personnel Board was asked to evaluate the town planner's position. Period. We're not expected to decide on what salary a person is supposed to get, just the fact that it's a town planner. If you want to add an EDC with this, and you want to bump it up to an N9, then do it. But right now, we have been asked to evaluate the town planner. The town planner evaluated at N8 and it's an equal to, well, I don't know, I don't have the list in front of me, but an N9 bumps the person up to the police chief, I think the fire chief, something like that, and then an N10 is the town administrator. So to put the town planner into an N9 without any other, any other evaluation done is to me, utterly ridiculous. An N8 is an N8, period. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And a final comment from our town administrator?
Through you, Ms. Moderator, could I ask the chair of the planning board, is it just the money that you're concerned about? Or, because I had received an email from you asking to go to an N8, and that's what started this. So I'm just checking to see if it's just because of the money.
We have current salary ranges, and I know that's going to be worked
I think you need to come to the mic when you answer the question.
We have current salary ranges, and we see where they fall. I just feel after being the chair for a while, I just want it locked in stone. I want my current salary that's been approved by the town to just fall into the correct bracket. And when everything falls into the correct bracket and went back up here and we want to change it again, that's fine. I just want it in stone. I don't want any problems after. I just want it to fit in the correct bracket tonight, right now. And if all the committees, everybody gets together and they change it again and it goes to town meeting, I'll support it, but I want the current salary to fit in the correct category, so there's no questions.
So your concern is not its salary rather than its classification?
I just want the current salary to fit into the classification as of today, as of it is right now, to fall into the correct category. End of story. And after we can explain it.
Final comment from our town administrator, and then we'll vote on the amendment.
So trying to be creative here and meet all needs, we would propose to take one moment, if the moderator would give the Board of Selectmen an opportunity, to take a vote it is the Board of Selectmen's purview on the classification, to take a vote to change the upper scale of an N8 to, what is the salary? 92, you're saying?
92.6 or something
Okay,
like that.
so 93,000. So you could take that vote now, and then I think that would meet the planning board's needs.
Okay.
We will allow the Board of Selectmen a moment to consider a salary range change for N8 classification.
Karen, I'll make that up. Go ahead.
Use microphone.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Gotta use the microphone.
Hmm?
We gotta use the microphone.
Yeah, go ahead. Make a motion.
To increase, go ahead, John.
To increase the salary range on an N8 up to 93,000.
You guys need to use the microphone?
This is a public meeting, therefore, any deliberation by the Board of Selectmen, and we'll only give them a couple of minutes to do this, because this can take place at a subsequent meeting. This is true.
Okay. Madam Moderator, the board was just organizing to get somebody to do a motion.
Okay.
Okay? So,
New information, sorry.
go ahead.
May I?
Go ahead.
The finance director just computed with the new okay. Sorry, I can't see you. The finance director just gave me her spreadsheet with the new COLAs, and she said the N8 is $40.44 an hour to $50.52 an hour, which means that the range is actually $84,115.20 is the low range. The top of the range now of N8 is $105,081 60. So there is no need, so you may be using an old classification plan or did not factor in the additional COLAs.
Given that, excuse me, I'm sorry for the confusion, but let's see if we can move forward. Given that information and given that your chief concern from the planning board was in terms of salary, do you wish to withdraw your amendment? And would the person that seconded that motion be willing to withdraw your second?
Yes.
Thank you. Given that, and given that we now know that the salary range for the planner is more in line with what the planning board desired, I will consider any further discussion regarding Article 8, and then we'll move to a vote. Sir?
Joel DeRocher, Berry Corner Road. Quick question. What is EDZ? We've been talking about it for 10, 15 minutes.
The EDC?
EDC.
Yes.
Wait, I guess I'm in the dark on this one.
Economic Development Director, EDC would be the commission, ED would be the Economic Development Director.
Thank you.
With having had a hearty discussion regarding Article 8, we need a majority vote in the affirmative for passage, and it would be changing the grades listed as they appear in your information booklet. All those in favor of Article 8 as stated and presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by no? No. The necessary majority is achieved with approximately 20 votes in the negative. Article 9, to fully fund an additional 5 firefighters as grant ends. To see if the town will vote to authorize the fire chief pursuant to his authority under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, Sections 42, 43, and 44, the provisions of which Charlton Town Meeting accepted May 26, 1931 vote, and in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to appoint 5 firefighters as permanent employees when a SAFER, Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response grant ends on January 8, 2019, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. Singer.
I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate $130,000 from ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation to fund the remainder of FY19 salaries for 5 firefighters rather than appointing 5 firefighters at this time.
Second.
Permanent. Did you mean rather than appointing 5 permanent firefighters at this time?
That's not what my motion says.
That's what it should say. Should say that. That's what it should say.
So then the motion as written here should say 5 permanent firefighters at this time. Yes, I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate $130,000 from ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation to fund the remainder of FY19 salaries for 5 firefighters rather than appointing 5 permanent firefighters at this time.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second before us that the town vote to transfer and appropriate $130,000 from ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation to fund the remainder of FY19 salaries for 5 firefighters, rather than appointing 5 permanent firefighters at this time. Could I please have a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee supports this motion.
Thank you. A recommendation from the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Is there anything to be said on this motion? Hearing none, a majority vote in affirmative is necessary for passage. All those in favor of Article 9 as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by no. A unanimous vote on Article 9. Thank you very much. Article 10, local gas tax. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board file with the general court a petition for special legislation in the form set forth below to allow the town of Charlton, if approved by qualified voters at the next regular municipal or state election, to impose a local tax of 3 cents per gallon of gasoline and diesel fuel sold to the public, provided, however, that the general court shall be authorized to make clerical or editorial changes of form only to the bill, unless the Board of Selectmen approves amendments to the bill before enactment by the general court, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to approve amendments which shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of this petition. An act authorizing the town of Charlton to establish an additional excise on sales of gasoline and diesel fuel, as described in sections 1, 2, and 3 in your special town meeting booklet, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. Zafarowicz.
I move that Section 2 of the text of the proposed special legislation set forth in Warrant Article 10 be amended by adding, immediately following 2018, the words "or 2019," and that is, with such revision, the article be accepted as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us that Section 2 of the text of the proposed special legislation set forth in Warrant Article 10 be amended by adding, immediately following 2018, the words "or 2019," and that with such revision, the article be accepted as printed. Do we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee supports this motion.
Thank you. And a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen.
The Board of Selectmen supports this motion.
Is there any discussion or explanation? While the other person is down, Mr. Sage.
Thank you. This is very similar to when the town passed the meals tax, which got a lot of negative reaction at the beginning until we began to realize how much the gasoline on the Mass Pike, or the food on the Mass Pike, actually brought us. When it was first proposed, it was thinking and we might make about $30-something thousand a year, and I believe it's well over $100,000 a year that it brings in. And I calculated out that it would actually cost me about $30 going out every Friday night and eating in town. Just to give a perspective here, if you use 1,000 gallons a year of gasoline, it would cost you $30 extra. If you only got 20 miles to the gallon in your car, you would actually travel 20,000 miles. Think about how much you travel, what your mileage is on your cars, and it probably is a lot better than 20 miles a gallon. At least I would hope so. So it really impacts, I think, the residents of Charlton very little when you compare it to the amount of resources it's going to bring into our town to use for our town.
Thank you for adding that information. Ms. Peck?
Yeah, I really don't understand now Section 2 where he wanted to make this amendment. So if we vote tonight to pass this and say, okay, the 3%, there's one part in here that says it happens immediately. And now what he was just proposing is to amend Section 2, which delays it for a year until a full town vote is held. What is it?
I don't think that understanding is exactly correct, so I'll ask the town administrator to please clarify this language.
Yes, thank you. The changing of the date is only in case we do not get this approved in FY19 since it's October. 18, since it's October, there's a good chance that it'll go through in 2019.
Oh, so what you're saying is
add it.
It's kind of like vote again and again. If you don't get your way tonight, if it's not voted on tonight, then it comes up again in 2019.
No.
Just wait, please.
What it means is it,
explain.
I'd be glad to. It sounds like, when you vote, if you approve it tonight, which you did in 2016, what happens is that our legislators will take it to the State House. It needs to pass both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then it becomes a special act. It did not pass in both houses. It actually went into committee, and where it still is in committee at this point. If it comes out of committee, then it would come back here for a ballot vote before it could be enacted. The issue is the state has had quite a bit of conversation about this, and what they started to do was to look at having it as the meals tax and the hotel tax, which would be a local option. So I think we got put on the back burner while they had that discussion. My understanding at this time is that the time has run out. There's a statute of limitations. So it's been the 2 years, so we just need to reaffirm if you would like us to continue to pursue this.
All right, thank you.
That's all.
Thank you for explaining that. Any further questions or anything further to be said on Article 10? If not, a majority vote in the affirmative is necessary for passage. And the article before us is that Section 2 of the text of the proposed special legislation set forth in warrant Article 10 be amended by adding immediately following 2018 the words "or 2019," and that with such revisions the article be accepted as printed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by no. No. The majority is in favor, so Article 10 passes with approximately 25 negative votes. Article 11, zoning bylaw amendment for marijuana establishments. To see if the town will vote to amend the marijuana bylaw adopted as Article 27 at the 2018 annual town meeting as follows. And rather than read this entire passage, I would direct your attention to the changes that are noted. Deletions are shown in a strike-through font and additions in a bold font. And it extends through the next 4 pages, and or take any action relative thereto or thereon. I'm looking for a motion if we are going to consider this article. I move that. Come to the mic, please.
I move that the article be accepted as printed.
Do we have, right, I'm going to explain that in just 1 minute. Is there a second to that motion? We have a motion and second before us to accept Article 11 regarding the zoning bylaw amendment for marijuana establishments as printed. Given, and I certainly will give you a few moments to look through this, given the considerable controversy that has surrounded the issues addressed in this article, and the requirement of a 2/3 majority in the affirmative for passage, I will set the method of voting as by ballot. Following discussion, if any, directions for balloting will be provided. So let us start by giving you just a few minutes to look through this, and then I will call for any discussion, and then I will provide the directions for a ballot vote regarding this article.
Madam Moderator, I have a brief summary, if that will help the read. I can.
As people look through it, that would be good if you wanted to speak to that.
Could you explain to me NB, V, CB, IG, and BEP?
In just 1 moment, please. I need to get the recommendation of the planning board, which I think will come with her explanation. And what I would like to do is hold the questions until we get that brief summary. The recommendation of the planning board.
The planning board recommends.
And would you share your explanation so that people can follow it along?
At its September 26, 2018.
Can you speak more directly into the mic? Thank you.
At its September 26, 2018 Planning Board meeting, the board held a public hearing on its proposal to amend the marijuana bylaw adopted as Article 27 at the May 2018 town meeting. The board heard many comments from town residents. We worked hard to prepare a reasonable compromise that will better protect residential neighborhoods from the potential impacts of marijuana uses while allowing Charlton to reap the economic benefits of new jobs in an expanded tax base. The proposed amendment would amend the use table of the zoning bylaw by prohibiting medical and adult use marijuana in all districts except for the industrial IG, industrial general area. The board now believes that such uses are not appropriate in areas that might negatively impact residents. IG districts, however, are intended for a wide variety of industrial warehousing and traffic generating businesses and are an appropriate location for marijuana uses. Even in IG, all marijuana uses must obtain a special permit from the planning board. This is a discretionary permit which requires 4 votes of the 5-member board. The board can deny the permit if it feels the use would be detrimental to the town, or it can impose conditions to require mitigation of traffic, lighting, noise, unsightly views, and other features of the project to eliminate negative impacts. Upon closing the hearing, the board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the amendments to town meeting. We worked for weeks, and we summarized all of the emails, and there were over 40 from different residents of the community who had they wanted their opinions heard, and we summarized all of those, and we made sure that this new zoning bylaw was what was being asked for. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that information from the planning board's perspective. Are there any questions or any discussion regarding this article? And this time, would you identify yourself as residents since it's not?
Rachel Hartwig, 2 Freeman Road. I still haven't heard what CB stands for, or what BEP stands for, or NB stands for, or RSE stands for. I know I live in R40.
We'll see if we can find that out for you.
Moderator,
By yourself, everybody. Thank you.
may I have permission to address the meeting? I'm not a town resident.
If there are no objections, I will ask our planner to address these questions.
Thank you. Bill Scanlon, interim town planner. Here we have the, here we have the town.
Speak right into that mic, please.
Sure. Please, thank you. Before you have a copy of the zoning map. As currently proposed, we are intending to allow marijuana establishments in the industrial general district, which is primarily along the western corridor of Route 20, and is shown in this sort of peach color. There are only a few districts where these uses would be allowed, and it's probably just a few % of the town. The area in white is the agricultural district, which encompasses most of the town, and that is the location where we had most of our comments. And as you can see from the use table, we are proposing to prohibit all marijuana establishments in the agricultural district, as well as all the other districts except for industrial general. It's probably a little difficult to see, but we have CB stands for community business, which primarily falls along Route 20 and is the location where most businesses are allowed. We have a couple of residential districts, including residential small enterprise, R40, and the agricultural district, of course, which is a 60,000 square foot district. We also have another sort of office and professional district called Business Enterprise Park, which is shown in this green color, and there were a couple of those locations. For example, Treehouse went into a BEP district. And then recently, a couple of years ago, town meeting amended the Village District, which is this sort of purple color in and around the town center. And I should also point out that there is another industrial general district along Route 169 down by the Southbridge town line where marijuana establishments would be allowed.
Thank you. A further question, did that answer your question, Ms. Hopper?
What does RSE stand for? Residential?
Residential small enterprise.
Thank you. I just want to comment.
I'm sorry, I would have to ask that people cease their conversations in and among themselves so that we can hear the general discussion. Thank you.
I just want to comment on the fact that this schedule looks like it has no everywhere, including where it says SP, and they're all crossed out. So basically, special permit only in the industrial zone. And from what I can see, even in the BEP, it's not acceptable. It's all no.
Correct. I believe the planning board chair indicated that the only place where there would be allowed usage, and that would be by special permit, is in IG. So that is a correct summary.
That's it. So we're talking about nowhere in town. What about what has already been, say, Valley Green Grow and those we've already contracted or looked at?
Those, well, I won't speak, but my understanding is that any firm that had their applications in have been grandfathered prior to our annual town meeting in May.
Is that true?
And
That's so?
anyone can correct me if that's not.
Yes, there are two establishments that are protected from the original zoning amendment that was adopted at the annual town meeting. Those are Valley Green Grow and the medical marijuana dispensary. Forget the name of it, was Healthwise, I forget what it's called now. So those two would still be allowed to go forward.
Because their applications were in prior to our enacting that zoning.
Yes, and they submitted something called, took advantage of a plan freeze which locks in the zoning prior to the adoption of the bylaw by town meeting by submitting preliminary or definitive plans to protect their property.
Thank you. Further discussion or comment?
Yes, Linda Davis, Ramshorn Road, Charlton. And I have a question regarding the availability of the land in the industrial zone, because looking at the master plan from 2008, which is the only data I can find on land use, there's only 700 acres in town that is zoned industrial use. And in that report at that time, it said that 2.2% of the industrial zoned land was already being used for industry, which left, as my calculations, 84 acres, whereas we have 24,000 acres of agricultural land. So it seems I'm wondering, does the planning board know how much acreage is available right now, and what would that be?
I'll see if we can get an answer for you from planning board to come to the mic, please.
Currently, 85% is agricultural zoned, and in the current zoning, and Bill might be able to give you more details in the actual acreage, but in the current zoning, if you have 10 or more acres of agricultural zone in your backyard or your neighbors, you can put up a marijuana manufacturing factory. It's a manufacturing building. If you have 10 acres next to you, so behind you, you could get one of these factories. And we are, so it's 85% of the town is agricultural zoned.
Yeah, I know that, I said that. My question is, how much available industrial land is there? Is it already all in use? Is this an end run around marijuana in the future because all of our 700 acres has already been is being used by other industries, or is there available IG land in town?
We'll see if we can find out how much IG land is still available.
I'm sorry, I don't know the acreage of available land, but this bylaw would certainly allow conversion of existing buildings to this kind of use. And in fact, we do have a proposal before the planning board to convert an existing building in the IG district to a cultivation facility for marijuana. So I think we need to consider the entire industrial district as available for this use at some point in time.
Thank you. Further?
Can I just finish my comment? One more comment, I am against this amendment or this changing of the zoning bylaw because I feel that, for one, cultivation of plants is agriculture in some sense. And you may classify marijuana as industrial, but I ask you to consider that in the future we might need to grow certain food crops indoors. It might behoove us to do that. And allowing the construction of indoor cultivation centers in agricultural districts will allow us the opportunity as a town to take advantage of other growing needs. And furthermore, I think that we need more business in town, and narrowing this to just the industrial, for example, the medical facility, saying that, well, we have one, the next medical facility can't be on, in a community business or a village district because we want it on an industrial zone so we don't see it. We have other stores that sell many products in this town in the village business district. So in my opinion, to relegate this one commodity into some hideaway place is not a good thing. It's not business friendly, and it's not good for the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your views.
Deborah Pettiford. And I just want to comment, I am also opposed to this. It narrows it down too much. And my other comment has to do with the agricultural zoning that we have listed in this town. We have 85% of our land listed as agricultural zones. I don't know of any agricultural business except one, and that is owned by the town. All these other farms that are still zoned agricultural have 100, 150, 250 acres of land that they pay minimal taxes on because they maintain an agricultural designation without any agricultural on it. So this land could be better used to grow things that are going to provide money for the town. If people don't pass this and allow the marijuana business to come in, what you're going to see is you're going to see eminent domain by the state, and you're going to see solar farms everywhere. It's already happening. They can't take over a business that's already there, but they can take any land that they want, and you can't stop them. And the other comment I have is that a marijuana growth business will not only provide jobs and income for the town. Solar plants won't do that. All these solar farms don't do it. They come in, they work for 3 days, and they're gone.
Thank you for sharing your views. Ms. Spiewak.
Hi, Karen. I want to make it clear I'm speaking as a resident of the town. Karen Spiewak, 90 Osgood Road. First, I would like to commend the planning board and the citizens they worked with whose opinions varied. They were on both sides of this topic. They worked very long and hard, put in many hours, and I think really reached a wonderful compromise. We talked tonight about, department heads got up and mentioned how long they worked on coming up with different, what's the word, Mrs. Hartwig? The positions, the job positions? Thank you, classifications. You got to give some respect to the folks who have spent so many hours doing their homework. I certainly support the article as presented tonight, and one more time, just want to say thank you to the planning board and to their citizens who took so many hours to really reach this, what I think is a good compromise. And I would just like to quickly address, I think, Ms. Davis's comment about the master plan. I just think it's something we need to revisit. I had served on it way back when, and I know cannabis, along with large ground-mounted solar arrays, that wasn't even on the radar screen, and it's time, I think, to revisit that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your views. You were next.
Jordan Evans, 122 Glen Echo Shore Road. I have a question of definitions. I noticed that under Z, marijuana establishments, you have immediately following that, retail sale of marijuana and marijuana products and accessories. is there a particular list or source of information that defines what is a marijuana accessory? Because of the shared relationship between marijuana accessories and tobacco accessories, are we also going to, because of the broad definition, accidentally ban certain tobacco accessories as well? Is there a way, or is there a location that the board used to define what is an accessory?
Thank you for raising that question, and we'll see if we can get an answer for you. Would the planning board like to speak to that?
I'll try to answer it, and
Right into the mic.
I'll try, and I think the attorneys might be able to correct me. The Cannabis Control Commission has a definition of those items.
Thank you. And I would ask Attorney Loughlin who is with us tonight also, to see if she can add perhaps some additional clarification there.
So the Cannabis Control Commission is charged with regulating marijuana and marijuana products, and those are very specific definitions. And the definition of marijuana involves anything that has the THC content of above 0.03%. If it falls below that in terms of marijuana content, it's not part of the CCC regulations. Part of the proposal of what is being amended in the zoning bylaw includes a marijuana accessories definition, and this definition is not something that is taken from the Cannabis Control Commission regulations. It's something that the planning board created themselves, and it involves a list of equipment, products, devices, materials, et cetera, that is used for the cultivation, growing, harvesting, otherwise introducing marijuana into the human body. So this is a much broader definition than what the Cannabis Control Commission is regulating. And there is a provision in subsection M that the planning board is also proposing that cannabis accessories, which I believe should relate back to marijuana accessories, may only be sold in establishments holding adult retail or medical cannabis license or adult-only tobacco retailers. So the planning board has attempted to regulate the sale of marijuana accessories to a level that is not specifically regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission. This is not a requirement of state law that these types of accessories or products be sold only in adult use marijuana establishments. This does raise a few legal concerns. This was not a provision that was the subject of legal review. This is a very broad definition, and it may have the effect of regulating products that are otherwise sold in establishments that are not marijuana related. There could be a very broad definition of the types of products or devices that are used to cultivate marijuana that may have overlap with other types of products that are used in general agriculture or general storage. So this provision will be the subject of review by the Attorney General as to the broadness and the specificity of this definition and whether or not it appropriately is within the bounds of what is an appropriate land use control.
Thank you for sharing that information. Sir.
Yes, Shane Burke, 85 Highland Road, Charlton, Mass. Who issues these special permits to any of these zoning restrictions?
The planning board would issue those.
So then why is the planning board recommending that they restrict their own power? Do they not trust their own judgment here? Or, I mean, I don't really understand what the hang-up is. I'm being honest.
I will let the planning board respond.
So with a special permit, to summarize it, it allows us to have more control. If it's just allowed, it's allowed. With a special permit, if there are close residences, if there's too many families, we can say that's not a good place to have, to be manufacturing marijuana.
Okay, so then why not allow yourself to have the ability to do that when you think it's a good idea, as opposed to just out and out saying no? That's what I don't understand.
The special permit gives them the ability to do that. But
So if you wanted to apply for a special permit and you wanted to open up your own facility, you would use the special permit to apply to the planning board, and then we would review that and to allow you to or not allow you.
Right, or you could just say no, is what I'm saying. So if you, you could, so essentially you could just say no to these special permits when they come across the desk. So, I mean, couldn't we just say no anytime it was unreasonable for one of these establishments to exist, as opposed to just out and out saying no when we already have businesses that are going to be coming in and doing this anyway? So we're not going to be a dry town at this point, from what I understand from this meeting. So, you know, why then say, oh, well, we're just going to cut this off instead of giving the planning board the power to do their job? And if you don't like who is controlling those special permits, then whatever we need to do to put another person into that position, then put that person into that position.
Thank you for sharing your opinion. Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Noreen Johnson-Smith at 136 Dresser Hill Road, and I'm sorry, I'm trying. I live at Dresser Hill Road, and I appreciate this particular amendment because I think it speaks to the spirit of the state law that was passed in the first place, and the vote of the town in not wanting to have these facilities in people's backyards. And it sounds like a scare tactic to say that, but in the meantime, while we were sleeping, there was a proposal to put one on Dresser Hill Road right behind my neighbors' homes. And it's not a simple growing facility. It's not like our neighbors at Robbins Gardens or other places that have a little greenhouse or a large greenhouse, doesn't matter. These places need security, and that's by state law. That's not a choice. It's not like we can hide it out of the way and just put up a fence. There are requirements for security and lighting, and this isn't a residential production issue. So I very much appreciate, I think this is a nice compromise, that it allows the town to take in new business, to keep it in an industrial zone, to allow this type of manufacturing and secure facility to be located there, and it takes it off of the backs of neighbors to have to jump up every once in a while when all of a sudden you didn't realize it, but someone's proposing to put it in your backyard. So I think it protects the town and the residents and those of us who pay taxes here and want to preserve our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your views. Another comment or question?
Yes.
Could you identify yourself?
My name is Frida, and I live on Nugget Drive, I'm sorry. My concern is that looking at that map and knowing that there's 85% of our town that is agricultural, and agriculture is going out. It's harder and harder for farms. Even the guy up at Fay Mountain is having a hard time sustaining. If we allow 85% of our town to just be agriculture, we're losing out on a lot of revenue. And from looking at these documents here, I can definitely see that our town is in need of a lot of money. If agricultural zoning is also allowed to have residential houses bring in a lot of people. Those people don't pay enough taxes to support the school, the fire department, the police department, et cetera, that is needed in a town to run. So I think we're really putting ourselves at a disadvantage in this town. That's my first point. My second point, as a resident and a small business owner, I've done this a few times. I had a business in Worcester. I was in a residential area. The way the zoning laws were written, it was hard for a pet grooming business to be able to be in a residential area that was also zoned for small businesses. Because the way the zoning laws were written, pet industry was only regulated in veterinary and hospital because they considered my business.
Can you link that directly?
Yes, I think if you're leaving agricultural businesses, it's a very narrow definition. And marijuana fits into that. Cannabis fits into that. And so I think you're getting into a lot of gray area where you're going to have people coming in. You have people who want to grow mushrooms in warehouses. There's going to be a big deal about that. What about if somebody was growing hemp? Hemp is an agricultural product. It could go into agricultural land, right? Now you're going to have an outdoor crop that's going to smell a lot. I think this just is not thought out, and I think it needs to be further thought out, because we're leaving ourselves a lot of money out the window.
Thank you for sharing your
You're welcome.
views. The gentleman behind you here.
Roger Cloutier, 17 Colburn Road. I'd like to make a couple points. One, I believe the state considers growing marijuana industrial general, so it really does belong in that zone. And the second thing is, most towns in this area, if not all of them, restrict it to industrial general. So, I mean, we're just doing what everybody else is doing. I've been going to the Board of Selectmen's meetings and the Planning Board meetings, and there's 5 or 6 marijuana companies just keep coming, and you wonder why they come here. It's because they can literally put it in anybody's backyard in town. Without this bill, there is no, like she said, any place with 10 acres they can choose to build. And there's not much the Planning Board can do to help you. This Board of Selectmen can't do anything. So I think it's very important, and I support this bill.
Thank you for sharing that comment. Sir.
Bill Borowski, 69 Haggerty Road. Let's get the basics out of the way very quickly. This is an imperfect zoning bylaw, but here's a not so hidden secret. Every zoning bylaw is imperfect. There's a reason why developers find loopholes. There's a reason why zoning bylaws continue to come back to town meetings so you can close said loopholes. This is a great extension of what we started back May. One of the issues that comes up with is, can we potentially lose revenue on this? Absolutely. But here's the question I have for you. How many of us moved to Charlton or decided to stay in Charlton? Some of the families I see out here from multiple generations, because you enjoyed our way of life. This bylaw, even though it sounds a little silly, but bear with me for a second, is the equivalent of buying earthquake insurance. You may never need it, but the reality is, by passing this bylaw, as a resident, you're never going to look in your backyard and see a marijuana manufacturing company. That's what this does. Could it be done a little better, and maybe will be in the future? Yes. Will this give you a better peace of mind? Will it allow you to sleep a little better, knowing you don't have to monitor every single planning board meeting, every single Board of Selectmen meeting, just to make sure? Absolutely. So please join me in voting yes with this.
Thank you for sharing that. You were next? Okay.
Jordan Evans again, 122 Glencoe Shore Road. So thank you for answering my previous question. I just wanted to do a quick follow-up that I thought of while I was back there again. So back to what qualifies as an accessory, because it sounds like it's a very broad definition. Another question of definitions, but by banning this in all these different zones, does that also impact retailers who do business exclusively online with accessories? And I'm thinking more of like your Etsy shop-esque glass blowers who technically are making glass things that could be used for the consumption of marijuana. Would they be unable to sell their product online? How does this relate with online retailers, and do they follow their own kind of zone? I guess my big concern is that these small businesses might be collateral as a result of the other broader, or rather the other larger topic at hand.
Thank you for sharing that concern. I would remind you again that the Attorney General has to approve anything that we pass here at town meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Sir.
Zach James, 23 Boucher Drive. Some concerns have been, Zach James, 23 Boucher Drive. Some concerns have been brought up in regards to some of the bolded print in here. If the Attorney General does not agree with any particular piece of this, does that null our potential positive vote on this, or just that section?
I'll ask our attorney.
No, it wouldn't necessarily do that. The Attorney General looks at each of the amendments separately, and if there was a concern with one specific portion, they could disapprove one change without affecting the other changes. And the standard that the Attorney General uses is whether or not there is a clear conflict with state law or violation of the Constitution. So it's a fairly high standard for disapproving any one portion.
So if they didn't agree with any particular verbiage in here, it could be stricken without having to go back for a revote?
They could, yes, they could remove one particular provision. It would not necessarily come back to the town for a revote on that. But it wouldn't, so for example, if there was an issue with the marijuana accessories definition and that was disapproved, then that particular provision would not be able to be enforced. But for example, the changes to the use table would not be affected by that disapproval.
Thank you very much.
Sir?
Mike, Burlingame Road. I would just like to point out that marijuana with the active ingredient in it is actually a different strain of plant than hemp. The hemp industry that grows stuff for clothing, that actually grows a different plant that has almost no active ingredient in it. You can't get high off of hemp. If you smoked it, you would just get sick. So I think that you can't really compare marijuana that gets you high to hemp industry. I think, hopefully, if the hemp industry ever came to our town, that we could grow it on agricultural land without a problem. That'd be great. And I would also like to add that I come from Boston, and I came to Charlton because it's a nice, quiet place with low stress levels. And I would like it to stay that way, so that's why I support keeping industries like marijuana in industrial zones, so that I don't have to worry about what's in my backyard and what's happening to my well water. I actually enjoy it here.
Well, thank you. Welcome again. Supervisor Administrator, did you had a comment before I ask our last person to
I was. Basically, it's on the last question before about what the AG would do. And I'm noticing we haven't really said, if you look at the changes in this article, you will find some text that you had voted for on the floor. I believe it was the amendment to not have any product in the facility, and all the product and money had to come out at the end of the day. The AG took a look at this, and they struck that part out. I did check with our counsel. We do not have to bring that back, so you don't see that in the article strucken out. It disappears. As soon as the AG says that's gone, it just goes.
Thank you. Yeah.
My name's Irene Salonis, 133 Old Worcester Road. I want to tell you about experience, and I have a question. Many years ago, the Mass Pike came through this town. Later on in years, I moved down, and we moved in and bought a house. My kids here thought it was a great place to bring them up. We ended up with environmental pollution in our wells. We never got anything from the town, any help. We were taxed on saleable property that we couldn't sell. The only solution to our problem was that we ended up going into a lawsuit, and we also had a neighbor that had adopted 2 children, and the adoption wasn't final. And so therefore, afterwards, we talked to them after we got things settled. And it's important. Those children, if they hadn't finalized the adoption, it was a possibility that they would not be allowed to go through with that adoption. Now, what happens is, my question is this. It's associated with it, because this is what, nobody knew what was going to happen then. We don't know what's going to happen with this. Down the road, now how, if something should happen, where is the control? And are these people allowed in the future, they come in, and then can they take part of this that they have bought and then bring something else in as well? Is there anything in any of all this stuff that's written that's going to protect that, so that the town has some say on what they can do? That's my question.
Okay. Planning board, perhaps, can you speak in terms of control once some of these establishments?
In the future?
Yeah, there are actually multiple levels of control here. When the facilities are being built, the town inspection department goes out and makes sure that everything is built to code. This Cannabis Control Commission will conduct regular inspections and test products to make sure that they're healthy and sound. The Board of Health has jurisdiction over any environmental issues or contamination that might result from these facilities. So there's actually quite a number of different and independent boards and agencies that can oversee these operations.
I want you to know, it took us 12 years to try to get through this problem. 12 years that it took us.
We
Okay,
appreciate
thank you
that.
for listening.
Thank you. Final comment, and I think then that we should be ready to vote. Sir.
Madam Moderator, Gerard Russell, 63 Old Worcester Road. I support Article 11. I thank the Planning Board for revising. The cultivation, manufacturing of cannabis is a highly industrialized operation, and it belongs in an industrial zone. This is sensible zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who participated in this discussion and clarification of some of the issues. As I said previously, given the high level of controversy surrounding all of the marijuana zoning issues, we're going to proceed with a secret ballot. Only those, and please listen carefully to how we will accomplish this, only those that have a voting card will be allowed to vote, and you must have your voting card with you when it's your turn to come forward. All others must, so that would be our non-voters, all others must exit the auditorium either to the hallway or to the cafeteria down the hall. No one will be allowed in the auditorium once our process begins. You may leave the auditorium during the process, but will not be allowed back in until the conclusion of voting. We'll start voting for everyone from our side sections first. Everyone in the middle section will vote after the side sections have been completed. Please wait for a teller to come to your row before standing up, as they will be acting as ushers and helping to direct you. People in each row will file out toward the middle aisle. One at a time, a teller will check your voter card and give you a yes/no slip. You will then proceed toward the stage, and your color voter card will be stamped. Then you will drop your vote in the ballot box and discard the unused portion in the trash receptacle provided for you. Please do not take your unused portion of the yes/no slip back with you, as that is used for our count check. After side sections have voted, the middle section will vote, with the first row exiting to the right, the second to the left, and so on in an alternating fashion. Please wait for the teller to come to your row before standing and coming forward. All Charlton members from the stage, the police officers, town clerk officials, and tellers will vote after all residents have voted. After voting is complete, we'll have to take a few moments for the town clerk and assistant town clerk to count the votes. The meeting will not be able to continue until the vote has been certified and I have been able to announce it. Again, we would ask during this process that you keep all of your conversations as quiet as possible so that our clerk and assistant clerk can focus on the task at hand. Again, a 2/3 vote in the majority is necessary for affirmative. A yes vote supports this zoning article. A no vote does not. All right, so given that, I would ask anyone who is not a voter if you would kindly exit the auditorium. And then I would ask our tellers to come to the fore and come down and start the process in the first row of voters on each side. Jordan and Joe are going to be the tellers who are going to be directing.
Can we stay? Or do you want us to?
I will allow the town administrator and the attorneys to remain in place in case we have any questions of a legal nature.
Thank you. I think I'm really walking.
Everyone's cooperation in making a secret ballot that hasn't been done for a while, making it run relatively smoothly. In terms of voting and how that determination is made, every town meeting, we have three options. We have the option of the voice vote, the counted vote, which we have been using with our voter registration cards to make it easier, and there's always the option of taking a ballot vote. It was mentioned that you seem very prepared this time for the secret ballot. We are prepared every time, at every meeting, for that possibility, because the determination, which is customarily made by the moderator under the authority given in the general laws in terms of procedural issues for a town meeting. However, that request for voting can also come from the floor in Massachusetts. So I just want to explain again that this was not an attempt to favor one side over another, but an attempt on a very controversial issue to allow everyone an opportunity to express their opinion and do so privately. Again, a 2/3 majority vote in the affirmative was necessary for passage. The yes votes were 195, the no votes were 85, meeting the necessary 2/3 of 185 votes so that Article 11 passes as Article 12, to see if the town will vote to amend the use regulation schedule of the Charlton zoning bylaw, section 3.25Z, to provide that all marijuana establishments are prohibited in all districts, and to delete in its entirety section 5.20 of the Charlton zoning bylaw and replace it with the following. 5.20, marijuana establishments prohibited. Consistent with General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3A2, all types of adult use recreational marijuana establishments as defined in General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 1, and 935 CMR 500, including marijuana cultivators, craft marijuana cooperatives, marijuana product manufacturers, marijuana retailers, independent testing laboratories, marijuana research facilities, marijuana transporters, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business shall be prohibited within the town of Charlton, or take any action relative thereto or thereon.
Madam Moderator,
Mr. McGrath.
I move that the article be postponed indefinitely.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to postpone this article indefinitely. Is there a recommendation from the planning board? The planning board agrees. Would someone like to offer an explanation for the voters? Our town administrator.
Yes. For each zoning bylaw, it requires a meeting of the planning board, and that was not done. There were several reasons why, and I'm not going to go into all of them. So I'll just say that there was not a hearing.
A public hearing was not held, therefore this vote cannot be held. So all those, a majority in the affirmative is necessary for passage. We have a motion before us that the article be postponed indefinitely. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed by no. The majority has it with possibly 8 dissenting votes. Article 13 by petition. Citizen petition article, general bylaw, to see if the town will vote to amend the town's general bylaw by adding a new chapter and section that would provide as follows, and further to amend the table of contents to add said chapter and section. Chapter 157, marijuana. Section 157.4, host agreement. Selectmen shall comply with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 94G, and obtain town meeting approval of the terms of any host agreement pursuant to General Law, Chapter 94G, prior to signing. Any General Law, Chapter 94G host agreement previously signed by the Board of Selectmen, which does not comply with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3D, is declared null and void, or take any action relative thereto. If there is no motion...
Madam
on
Moderator,
this article,
Gerard Russell, Old Worcester Road. I move that the article be accepted as printed.
do we have a second? Yes, second. We have a motion and second before us to accept this article as printed. Is there anything to be said on the matter?
Madam Moderator, Gerard Russell, Old Worcester Road. To address the four corners of Article 13, this article seeks to give voters of Charlton the authority to approve cannabis community host agreements. This article, if approved, would also nullify any current host agreements that do not comply with state law regarding cannabis statutes. There is no protection in state law for a town to violate state law. The proposed article is not a violation of the Constitution, as Town Council asserts. It is my assertion the Valley Green Grow host agreement is not a legal contract under state law because the creative measures taken to increase revenue do not follow state laws concerning community impact fees from marijuana establishments. If approved tonight, this article could nullify the Charlton host agreement with Valley Green Grow that seeks to locate at Charlton Orchard. The authority for town meeting over host agreement is necessary for the protection of the town's financial interests with regard to any revenue expected or promised in host agreements. This article would allow citizens to be watchdogs over such agreements to make sure they are legally and financially sound and that appropriate bonds are posted by developers to protect the town from unforeseen circumstances. Had the town meeting had oversight of the VG project, we would have been able to look at threats to environmental and potential damage to wetlands. Instead, financial gain was the priority. Had the town meeting had oversight, we would have been able to have a say in safeguards to protect air quality. We would have been able to protect neighborhood wells that are endangered by the VGG project. We would have assured that citizens are protected from odor. Abutters of the orchard would have been protected from water runoff. Citizens would have been protected from arsenic soil contamination at the orchard. Citizens would have been protected from excessive traffic. The current host agreement does not address any of these significant issues. We would protect citizens regarding public safety issues. The cannabis business, because it is against federal law, is a cash business. Any host agreement must address financial concerns and dangers. The host agreement should have protected citizens regarding natural gas safety concerns. There is no publicly available public record that selectmen asked questions regarding significant issues of the VGG proposal to connect to the existing Kinder Morgan natural gas pipeline at the orchard. Nor is there any public record made available to citizens that selectmen asked the questions necessary regarding manufacturing in an agricultural zone. Likewise, there is no public record that selectmen asked the questions regarding a power plant proposed by VGG that is not an allowed use, zoning use in the agricultural zone. Town meeting oversight is important. Much authority is entrusted in town meeting. Any question about whether giving town meeting members authority over host agreements deserves a legal opinion. The Office of the Attorney General will decide what is legal. Although elections are a wonderful remedy to poor judgment by selectmen, the problem is they take place after the poor decisions are made. The citizens gathered in this room can be trusted to review host agreements negotiated by selectmen, to ask questions in an open meeting, to evaluate the good and the bad in these agreements, and then to approve or disapprove. For these reasons, Article 13 needs a yes vote, and the town meeting should exercise its authority over host agreements to protect the town, its residents, and taxpayers. Thank you.
Before we go forward with any further discussion, as legal questions were raised, I would ask our attorney, who is an expert in terms of the cannabis and all of those issues, to share a legal opinion regarding this article.
Madam Moderator, through you. This article proposes to do two separate things. First, it proposes to require that there be town meeting approval for any future host community agreements. And secondly, it provides that any host community agreements previously signed by the Board of Selectmen, which, according to this article, do not comply with provisions of 94G Section 3D, be declared null and void. There are significant legal concerns with both provisions of this article, and here are the reasons that those concerns are present. With respect to the contracting authority of the Board of Selectmen, town meeting certainly has some authority to direct or delineate the contracting authority of the Board of Selectmen to the extent that the Board of Selectmen are involved in the expenditure of funds. In this instance, the host community agreement is not a contract that involves the expenditure of municipal funds. It is a contract that involves a fee-based impact payment. And as such, the authority of town meeting to direct the Board of Selectmen in that regard is somewhat circumscribed. Further, there is an issue with respect to the Cannabis Control Commission's regulations and the requirements of state law with respect to the fact that any municipal bylaw that is passed cannot be unreasonably impracticable. The Attorney General has already determined that one provision of the town's zoning bylaw was within that standard of unreasonably impracticable, and that was the standard that required marijuana establishments to remove all of their product and all of their monies overnight. So that has already been stricken. There is concern, legal concern, that the provision that requires town meeting to approve every host community agreement could be deemed similarly impracticable, unreasonably impracticable, partially due to the kind of delay that it would impose on marijuana establishments looking to locate in the community with respect to their permitting and licensing process, because of the timing of town meeting and the timing that it would require to go through that process and the unlimited discretion that it would give. This could be deemed to be a provision that crosses that line into the unreasonably impracticable territory. Now, with respect to the provision that declares prior agreements null and void, there's a legal issue with respect to retroactively invalidating a contract once it's already been entered into. In my opinion, there is a constitutional issue that is raised with respect to a law that imposes, in which the state imposes some sort of restriction on the ability of entities to enter into contracts, and especially with respect to the retroactive invalidation of an agreement that already has been entered into in good faith by two parties. Now, with respect to the question of whether or not the agreement entered into by the town was in fact in violation of 94G Section 3, the issue that comes up in this context is with respect to the calculation of the community impact fee. Now, there's a provision in state law that says municipalities may enter into host community agreements, and those agreements may include a community impact fee, and that fee is capped at 3% of gross sales. The concern that's been expressed is whether or not this agreement exceeds that 3% cap and as such would be declared or could be found to be a violation of state law. Now, number one, town meeting does not have the ability to make a determination as to whether or not a contract is a violation of state law. So that is a problem with this article from a legal perspective, because town meeting cannot make that assessment and that determination. But on a larger scale, it should be clear, I'd like to make very clear that this host community agreement that was entered into by the town do not have a legal concern about whether or not this was a valid agreement. The host community agreement does include a community impact fee, and that community impact fee is at 3% of the gross sales. Now, the community impact fee and the host community agreement are directed at a particular use, and the use here is a marijuana cultivation facility, and that is within the four corners of what the law permits. In addition to the host community agreement, the Board of Selectmen entered into a development agreement, and a development agreement is something that is part of the broader municipal contracting authority and is used in many different contexts, not just the marijuana arena, for projects which have potentially impacts that need to be mitigated against. And the costs that are being paid to the town through a development agreement are outside the contracting authority of the host community agreement and are a separate, different, and distinct contract for which the town has general contracting authority to enter into. So there has not been, at this point in time, a determination by a court of law or by the Cannabis Control Commission as to the scope of municipal contracting authority. There's been significant debate around host community agreements and community impact fees, but those questions have not received any clear legal interpretation that could be applied in this case to determine whether or not the agreement here somehow violates those provisions. However, I believe we're on very strong legal ground with respect to the agreements that were entered into and their validity. So I would basically state that the concern I have here is twofold, and it's significant. Obviously, if this bylaw passes, this will be reviewed by the Attorney General, and the Attorney General can determine whether both parts or even just one part needs to be stricken. But certainly you should be aware that there are significant legal concerns with proceeding in this manner.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. Is there anything else to be said regarding this article? I think you'll have to go over, that's the only mic that's now available to us. And once again, as time has passed, if you would re-identify yourself.
Deborah Pettiford, 89 Rich Corner Road. I have two things to say.
Speak into the mic, please.
All right, I have two things to say. One, we elect a Board of Selectmen to make decisions for our town, and so that every little petty grievance isn't brought to town committee, to a town meeting. These people were elected to serve the town. We need to trust them to do that. That's one point.
No extra comments, please. Everyone has an opportunity to come to the mic to share their concerns.
And my other comment is on the apple orchard on Old Worcester Road. We hear all these concern about runoff from the new plant going in. What I don't hear is the fact that the apple orchard is probably one of the most poisonous things on the planet, next to a cattle farm. Between the pesticides, the fertilizers, and all the chemicals that are used to grow commercial apples like that, that is all runoff that goes into the water table. I don't understand how they would think that a contained system is going to be more detrimental than the poison that's been there for 50 years.
Thank you for sharing your views. Mr. Fennessy, would you identify yourself, please?
Francis Fennessy, 51 Main Street. Francis Fennessy, 51 Main Street, Charlton. I just wanted to make one point, and that is the host agreement incorporates the development agreement by reference. So they are two separate contracts, but they merge in the host agreement, if you understand what I'm saying. The host agreement says this agreement also incorporates the development agreement. So when there's a discussion as to what's here and what's there, they're together.
Thank
That's
you.
all I'd say.
Anything further to be said? Anyone speaking will have to come to the mic on my right.
Hi, my name is Patty Subitsky. I'm over at 2 Hayes Pond Circle. I have a question, and nobody's really talked about it. How many facilities are we talking about in town? People are making it sound like there's a facility that could be in the back of everybody's yard. But really, how many facilities are we talking about?
Well, in terms of, I will defer to the town administrator.
We have 2 that are moving forward. We have 2 that have applied. All of them are within your economic target district, which is along Route 20.
Right, but how many more could there be?
Well, for growing, there is no limit. For cultivation, I believe in the revision of the zoning bylaw. The retail is limited to 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. A further comment.
Yes, hi, Noreen Smith, 136 Dresser Hill Road.
Again, speak a little more into the mic.
Sorry,
Thank
it's
you.
my voice. So my concern is on principle about future taxation. So a host agreement sounds like a friendly document of hosting a business, but it's a contractual agreement that in the first 5 years has cost associated to the town budget that will be paid by the company that's coming in. And it's not like welcoming a restaurant or a grocery store. The only reason there's a host agreement is because there's an additional burden. First of all, it's intended to put the vote back in the hands of people who live here. But the second is financially, there's a burden on a town of hosting this type of business. And so the Mass Municipal Association received guidance from the Cannabis Control Commission in September that detailed out when you're doing these development agreements, you have to produce a line item budget with it, which means we can't just say, we'd really like $2 million a year for the first 5 years that you're operating, and we'll call that our development agreement. We actually have to say as a town, what are we going to spend that $2 million on? The only reason we can ask for that $2 million is because we're going to hire more police, hire more firefighters, put in more sewer lines, pay for more gas line connections and other security features that we as a town are going to be required to bear as an expense. So it's not free money. It's not a nice, pretty deal for the town. It actually comes with a series of expenditures. And after 5 years, those expenditures don't go away. We all wind up paying the taxes to cover them. So I don't understand how a lawyer can say that, first of all, we can't make a legal judgment in a town meeting when we have legal counsel here, but that this is a future financial commitment. On that principle alone, I disagree that the Board of Selectmen should sign without town approval. I would appreciate very much, and I value the hard work that the Board of Selectmen do, and I think advising the townspeople by creating these agreements and drafting them and preparing them for town meeting is a wonderful role for a board. And then the townspeople get to vote. Is this something we can live with 5 years out, whether this business is doing well or not? Those costs are on us. So I'm not willing to just sign my future tax burden away to someone else. It's like taxation without representation, and I know that's an inadequate reference, but you know, I just don't like it on the financial business. So I would vote yes for this article.
Thank you. If there is nothing further to be said.
Ms. Moderator?
Yes, Ms. Noble?
Sorry, I just want to ask a quick question. The attorney went and delineated very clearly the flaws as interpreted by the law. Can you tell me, though, is there anything about this petition that is not flawed? Is there anything in here that will stand up? Is there anything in here that, as I said, is not flawed on its face?
In an opinion.
In an opinion.
In my opinion, the entire bylaw has legal flaws.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is nothing else to be said regarding Article 13, a majority vote in the affirmative is necessary for passage. I think it would not be appropriate to ask for a voice vote, so we will do a counted vote. All those in favor, please raise your voter registration card. In favor of the article as put forward, I will repeat the motion. It was to accept Article 13 as printed. So it's as printed in your information packet.
Okay, lady.
Amending the town's general bylaw to add a new chapter and section.
I have no type of. I don't think so. Jesus Christ. What is the world coming to? He just let the legal system take care of it. I know. The thing is that the Attorney General and Counsel have talked on this already. I know. It's going to get.
And no by the same sign?
I'm not going to vote for something that is unconstitutional.
It doesn't matter.
You know, it does to me.
I'm voting the way I feel. I mean, everybody can do that, but
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, we know what's going to happen.
It's true.
By a vote of 139 to 95, Article 13 passes.
I move we adjourn.
All in